Hello and welcome to Spiritual Inspirations with Malak. Thank you so much for joining us for this broadcast. This will be our final part to our series, How Black People from Around the World Lost Their Spirituality and Power. We want to try to give you some resources. I want to give you some evidence where you can begin to do your own validation of the information that I have been giving you. Of course, you have to dig even further to make sure that you know that what you are verifying, validating, and even researching yourself, it is valid. And so we want to do this final part so that we can try to bring it all together to understand when we were in power and how do we get where we are today. Please excuse me if I sound a little under the weather. I have been battling a little bit over the last few days, but getting better. So if I take a drink of tea in the midst, please excuse me so that I can continue to give you the information. Okay, so let's get started. We have to come to understand that no one in this world's power structure wants us to know true history. This is why they put so much effort, and they have and continue to put so much effort in the changing of history. They know the truth, but because of their agenda, they have what we call whitewashed, not only just art, but history, period. And so we have to come to understand that the facts of history, many of them have been manipulated and changed, and the events also manipulated and changed. For example, Christopher Columbus did not discover America. I know for some of you're gonna run back to your textbooks and your teachers and your professors and your instructors in your education, and you're not going to want to believe it. But if you look past, I like to call it the topsoil of history, you will find out the truth. Christopher Columbus, supposedly in 1492, is the one that discovered America. How do you discover anything when you run into the inhabitants of the land that you're supposed to be discovering? Wouldn't the people who were already there, wouldn't they be the ones who discovered the land? And so when we look at history, we find out that actually this whole thing of Christopher Columbus discovering America, it's all about creating a system. This was the beginning of the creation of how can they extract and how can they dominate and overthrow and take over the world. And so we see social constructs created as these things begin to play out. Christopher Columbus, if you look into him, he did a lot of terrible things. And I don't know how a melanated person can celebrate a day named Christopher Columbus. But if you don't know any better, you can't do any better. So we hope that we can help you, at least point you in a direction so that you can go and do the investigation yourself. Okay, let me say this. There was a African king who basically wanted to see what's on the other side of the Atlantic because he was in West Africa. He was in a kingdom or a country we know as Mali. And he sent out men to go and search out and find out what was on the other side. And to make the story, a long story short, basically he ended up going himself after one of the searchers or voyagers came back. He took thousands of people and he left West Africa and he went himself with these people with enough resources to survive a number of years, and they landed in America. And so we see 180 years before Christopher Columbus, there were black people from Africa in the Americas. Yes, you heard me right. Black people in the Americas 180 years before Christopher Columbus, excuse me. So melanated people were already in the Americas before Christopher Columbus ever was even born. He wasn't even born when there were melanated people in the Americas. Now, allow me to give you the name of this king. His name was Abu Bakr, Abubakr of the Mali Kingdom. Look around the years 1311 to 1312, around that time period is when this took place. So I just wanted to give you that information so that when you want to do your own research, you have a starting point in which to start. Okay? And I know many of you heard of his relative that he left the kingdom to, Mansa Musa, which was and has been known as the richest man that has ever lived. So you can do some research on that as well. Now, there were thriving melanated societies and kingdoms before colonization. I know for some of you that it probably blows your mind because the only concept you have of your existence and maybe your mother's and grandparents' existence has been under colonial rule. And so you only know the life that you have been presented and what you have found yourself in. But I'm here to tell you that melanated people around the world had thriving societies and kingdoms. And this was all taking place while the Roman Empire was crumbling. And so as they began to war with each other and fight over the balance of resources because they had basically ran out of resources, we had melanated societies from Africa to North America to South America, to parts of Spain and Asia that had been already inhabited by melanated people, having a thriving, robust, rich kingdom, empire, and societies, whether they were great or small, doing very well for themselves. And I know I've read some of the comments, and there are people who just feel like, here we go, another video blaming the colonizer. Well, I say this: when there seems to be a problem, and every time you do the research as to why this problem exists, and there's always one significant piece that's a part of all of the struggles, that's a part of all of the problem. There's a common thread, even if that thread is you. In other words, if you're having problems in your family, you're having problems in your city, your society, and you are always the common thread, we have to take a look at why do you always show up in the midst of the problem? Why is it that when we look at the melanated societies around the world and what has caused them to no longer thrive, what has caused them to be oppressed, what has caused them to be enslaved, what has caused them to be in the category of being poor, and in the category of not having, there's one common thread, and that is the colonizer. So you may not like what is being said, and that is everyone's prerogative to like it or not like it, or at least do some research to see if what I'm saying is true. How is it that we, as melanated people, not just in one location, but around the world, were able to thrive in our lives? Yes, empires, they rise and fall. True. But there's going to be something I'm going to say at the end of this teaching, and I really want you to think about. And so we have to understand that we've had time periods before colonization. And I'm going to give you a few examples where we were really thriving. When I say we, I speak the word we because I'm a melanated man. And I am in love with my melanin. I am very happy to have been assigned in this lifetime to be a melanated man. I haven't always thought that way. Even growing up as a child, I found it very challenging growing up in the United States of America in a state called Alabama, in a little small town, and where you had no idea that you were able to be free enough to say whatever you want to say, do whatever you want to do, because there was always this aura in the air that you don't want to upset the non-melanated people. Behave yourself, boy. Behave yourself. So there's a lot of traumas that we melanated people, we do have to heal from and overcome. And so to come to the knowledge of knowing that we had thriving, rich, wealthy, well-to-do societies around the world is a very encouraging aspect of knowledge. Let me just give you a few examples. Let me start with Africa. In Africa, we had the Mali Empire. This Mali Empire was thriving from around the 13th century till the 17th century. This is while the Roman Empire and the Europeans were going through their changes. We also had the Great Zimbabwe from the 11th century to around the 15th century. Yes, doing very well in any and every aspect. They were in control of their mineral and their resources, and they were thriving in trade and so forth. And I'm telling you, we didn't have one colonizer in our midst trying to tell us or control us or build policies or get us to do this or that. We were able to do well on our own. We have another one, Ghana Empire, the Gold Coast. They had so much gold that the I believe it was the Arabs thought that they grew gold in Ghana. And so this is around the 7th century to the 13th century. And also Northern Africa, Morocco Empire. This is a place where most notably the Moors come from. Around 788 to 1957, this empire was thriving. That's 1,169 years. I'm telling you, this is, to me, very encouraging, because if we did it once, we can do it again. Now, a little bit about the Americas. And specifically, let's address North America. Indigenous tribes arrived thousands of years ago. And I want to talk about a location in the west coast of the U.S. called California. About 13,000 to 15,000 years ago, before a European or any colonization was taking place in North America. These are melanated tribes from whatever shade of melanation you want to actually talk about, because there was a variety of shades of melanation among the different tribes that was already in North America. These tribes had developed complex societies. They had developed complex traditions and relationships with the land. Doesn't that sound familiar? In Africa, it's the same thing. Our ancestors had these same complex systems, and they knew the land, their spirituality. They was very in tune. Even in the Americas, you know, you see the totem poles, you see the different things, the different dances, the headdress with the feathers. That's also found in Africa. That is not just what we've been told, a Native American thing. No, that thing was originated in Africa, and it was taken with the people. The different dances, the different, excuse me, the different deities that they may call upon, or powers, I like to call it, that they may call upon while doing these dances and so forth. all this before Columbus, before the transatlantic slave trade, because this transatlantic slave trade seems to be where a lot of focus is always given based on melanated people being taken from Africa in slavery and distributed. Did it happen? Yes, it did happen. But that's not the totality of the story. They don't want you to know that there were melanated people already in these areas, because Africans, not only the ones I told you about, the Malians, Moroccans, we know the Moors have been in Europe, Asia, the Americas, right? But in South America, in the islands, Africans had already, you see some of the statues, the heads, the pyramids, the mounds, you see all these things. These are signs of melanated people being all over the world prior to any transatlantic slave trade. As a matter of fact, I remember in the university when we were looking at how many people actually went to North America. It's been a while since I studied this, but I want to say the percentage of slaves that actually ended up in America was a very small percentage. I want to say it was somewhere between, don't quote me on this one, I would definitely have to go look this up, but I'm thinking around 15%. I could be wrong there. You can fact check me, but it was very small, meaning the majority of the Africans that were enslaved went to the islands and South America and Central America. So there was very small percentage of black or melanated slaves that was brought to North America. So that's a very interesting thing, is that, yes, black Africans or Africans were brought to the Americas via slave trade, but there were also Africans that came on their own, that inhabited these lands. And so we have to just acknowledge the fact that these things, matter of fact, there's a new research that shows over 50,000 years ago, this is very new, that black Africans, and I keep saying black African because we have this Africana thing going on with the whites down in South Africa, and they want to call themselves Afrikaans, but melanated Africans actually entered into the Americas over 50,000 years ago. And it's being said, based on the evidence, that the people are the Khoisan tribe that actually were believed now to be the first inhabitants of the Americas, or North America. And it makes sense to me as I look at what we call Eskimos, when I look at some of the Asiatic features in many black Americans, Asiatic features in many of the black Indians, or the original Indian before the $5 Indian took place. And with the climate change in the different hemispheres, you begin to see how the features would change over time. And it explains a lot of the shade variations without European influence. Excuse me. We know that there was some European mixing that took place, but it explains to me a lot better and more clear what I have seen and now understanding who the Khoisan are. Many melanated people thrived in different areas in North America, South America, Central America. And when you see, you can go on YouTube or whatever, you see these people with Afro descent, I should say Afro blood, African blood. You'll hear them call them Afro Latino, Afro this, Afro that. And it's because the original people who were coming to these areas by voyages or, trying to discover what was on the other side of the Atlantic on their own without slavery. They were there. They were the actual bloodline that came there. And yeah, and then in some instances there were a mixing of different people. And most of these different people that we're talking about, we're not talking about non-melanated people. They had different variations of shades of melanation. But when you talk about the actual African, more likely than not, you're talking about one with deep, rich melanin in their skin. And so these societies, they were doing well. Way before the Europeans came to do what it is that they wanted to do, and that is to take whatever was able to be taken and to take control of lands, take control of resources, and take control of whatever would make them to be the head, the controlling factor of any lands that they would come in contact with any inhabitants of that land. In other words, to enslave, whether if that meant to murder and kill in the process, that's what they were willing to do. So the non-melanated people, that's what they had on their mind, is how can they take the resources and how can they stay in control and dominate all society in the world. So we now know that we have had lots of prospering countries, societies, kingdoms that were melanated people before the European ever came on the scene. And see, once the European or the non-melanated man decided they were going to do what they had to do, they sent recon. Recon is a military term, a reconnaissance, where you go out and you scout, to see what you're dealing with, what possibly you may run into, what and how can you overtake and overcome or overthrow, get control of the target area. You go back with that report and then you plan. And that's what they did. And they did it very well because we see and we're experiencing the results of that recon and planning. So let's talk about how did this all happen. If you go back to part 1 and part 2, you can get more clarity. I'm a little bit more vague and not detailed because you get that in part 1 and part 2 of the video. But they did the bait and switch when it comes down to spirituality. They demonize the original spirituality of every melanated society that they came in contact with. Being that these melanated people originate out of Africa, you would already know that there was a level of spirituality already among these cultures and among these societies, and how they believed and how they went about their business of spirituality. They wanted to exchange. They demonize your spirituality, then they give you religion. Religion was a tool of control for them. And once you allowed this transition to take place, now they have control of the way you think, because they're going to teach you how you should be thinking. And the way you used to think, they're going to tell you that's wicked. That's mysticism. That's, voodoo or whatever. And to make you push away those things and take on how they want you to think. They'll control the way you teach your children. Now that you've taken on this new understanding and in this new thought process, now you'll teach it to your children. Then your children will teach it to their children, and then to their children. Do you see how this works? They take control of the way you do everything in life. And it happens slowly, but effectively. Every generation, it gets more and more control over you and your descendants. It's just a great time now that we are living in, that it seems like the ancestors, and it seems like the universe, it seems like the power of creation is shifting and changing gears. Excuse me. And it seems like there is a feeling in the air that things are shifting. That it's time for the melanated people to take back their control, take back their ability to thrive again. Okay, let me begin to bring this to a close. The video is getting quite lengthy, but I want to say, as I examine history beyond the European influence, I see melanated societies doing quite well for themselves before they became involved. I have a question. Since colonization, whether you're talking about the old colonization or this neo-colonization, the old colonization, they were physically here running things. Neo-colonization, the physical presence is nowhere as much as it was, but mental and systematic colonization is still well intact among the countries that they were colonized. We just have black leadership running the colonizer's system. Nothing truly has changed other than the faces. So which society, since colonization, has elevated itself back to prominence on the world stage? That is for those people who say, here's another video blaming colonization. Why don't Africans take responsibility for allowing it? Before colonization, we had quite a number of thriving societies and empires and kingdoms. I'm asking you the question. Name me one melanated society that has elevated itself to prominence on the world stage. You know what I mean by that? US, China, Russia. Y'all, are you understanding where I'm coming from? The answer is none. And there's one common thread: colonialism. They are still very much in control, very much still in power. Thank goodness that there are a few leaders that are starting to say enough is enough. And they are changing the narrative. And I pray that more countries would look at these leaders and see, when you lead on behalf of the people and not on behalf of yourself and your pockets and your bank account, what could happen and what can take place, and how countries and kingdoms and societies can rise to prominence again. We're living in a very exciting time where we are seeing the beginning stages of several, here in Africa, several countries beginning that plight. And it's exciting to me. We have to get to the point where we unlearn some things and then relearn the truth. We have to learn how to change the narrative and the direction that has been forced upon us as melanated people. We must let go to change our future. Let go of all that they have taught us and all they told us we had to do, we need to do, and let it go. We have the knowledge, melanated people. We've always been a very intelligent people. We have the skill set. If you look all around the world at melanated people, there's not a profession that we don't have the skill set in order to build great, thriving societies again. We have the resolve once we can let go of their system. We've been targeted for annihilation, and we're still here. We have the resources under our feet. That's why they come and they get access to the land, because they know under our feet is our greatest resource. Melanations all over the world, it's time to come together. Set aside our differences for a greater cause, and that is the future of our children and our children's children. It's time to take back our spirituality and our power. This is Spiritual Inspirations with Malak. I hope we've said something as we concluded this series that have sparked something in you, and I hope that we can come together as a melanated people and bring about change, real change in the world. If you would like to donate, if you would like to support our channel, we will have the information down in the description box. And if you would, please subscribe, like, and share our videos. We are trying to obtain a certain number of subscribers. So if each subscriber that we have right now, if you just get one of your friends to become a subscriber, we will reach our goal. Can you do that for me? hit the like button, hit the share, and encourage at least one of your friends to subscribe to our channel. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful future. Have a wonderful day. And let your energy be positive. Let your mind now go toward the liberty, the freedom, and the justice that we have always deserved. We love you. And don't forget, we have what it takes to thrive again.
Oh, no matter how far, we know this world is ours. Bringing African nations together in unity. Starts with you and me. Bringing African nations together in unity. African brothers and sisters come together and reform. Our view is no longer cloudy cause we always weather the storm. Afro's a label that they tried to make negative, but it's really a word that leads back to our heritage. The ancient name of Africa was Al Capone. To hide our history, the name's been changed many times. Mother of mankind, Garden of Eden, land of the blacks. All leads back to melanin, and that is a fact. They try to change the map, but it just ain't mapping. Bunch of Mario Bros, they just always capping. Africa is the hub.